I'm Larry Weeks, and this is Bounce.
Practically 90% of the people hate their jobs or don't care. I would say in the US, 30% are engaged, 40% don't care one way or the other, and 30% actively hate their jobs. A lot of people today in the business world are disappointed or disengaged because they feel disempowered. They feel that, whatever the boss says we have to do, then we'll just do what we're told. And that is horrible. It's really ugly to live like that. What the company wants is to be profitable, to achieve the mission, but that requires that people make sacrifices for the sake of that and trade down or let their OKRs not be optimized. And no incentive system will solve this problem. And if you tell people we're going to measure you by local metrics, then everybody loses their focus because they say, well, I'm helping everybody, but then nobody's accountable for anything. I want to pursue the mission. I want to be excited. I want happiness. I want meaning. Of course, I want money. I need to have my basic needs covered. But how much money is going to take for you to start getting bored about money?
Hello, everyone. I'm Larry Weeks, and welcome to another episode of Bounce. It's no surprise to anyone listening that most people aren't very happy with their jobs. Although, let's acknowledge that modern workplace conditions as well as quality of life for most Americans has greatly improved over the years. That said, there's a great deal of dissatisfaction, even depression for many that's related to their jobs. A lot of employees feel that they have to make a trade-off between monetary and psychic rewards. But according to my guest, there's a better way. Fred Kofman is the former vice president of executive development at LinkedIn and current leadership advisor at Google. He is also the author of 7 books, including Conscious Business, Authentic Communication, and for our discussion, his findings in his latest book, The Meaning Revolution. And in that book, Fred addresses both sides of the issues facing employees and employers and describes how to create not only a productive work environment, but a meaningful one. Talking with Fred was like meeting with a spiritual advisor for whom you've climbed a mountaintop to see. And make no mistake, this is a business discussion, but it felt for me very different. What he said resonates, is maybe the best way to describe it. I felt optimistic about his view of work in a, wow, this is the way it really should be kind of a way. You should listen to this episode because it's about the majority of how your life is spent, your work, why you do it, how you do it, changing where you do it, how companies measure it. And since Fred was an executive and board member at LinkedIn, he gives some great advice on how to use the platform. We talk about what people most overlook regarding LinkedIn. We also talk about how to build identity capital, how to size up a company's true culture. And that's very helpful if you're in the job market, because usually we get blinded by the financials or the benefits that we're offered. We talk about what it means to work for a mission, workplace motivation, and happiness. So talking with Fred was very eye-opening for me. I think you'll find that it helps change how you look at your long-term work goals. At least I hope so. So if you're interested in creating a more meaningful work experience, Fred points you in the right direction with all the right tools. So without further ado, here's Fred. Fred, welcome to the show.
Delighted to be here, Larry. Thank you for inviting me.
And you were, and we were just talking about this for our audience, you were a vice president at LinkedIn, right? Was it in the organizational leadership development or area or?
Executive development.
Got it. And now, over the last couple of weeks, you are now an advisor at Google in a similar area, I'm assuming.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Very cool. And are you in Mountain View or where are you? San Francisco?
Yeah. I work in the Googleplex.
Got it. So you just left LinkedIn, so I'll go ahead and ask you, what are people missing, let's say employees, about the use of LinkedIn outside of a job search?
Yeah. Well, let me divide the answer into 2 parts. The first is not outside, but I'd say expanding the job search. Because most people see a job search as a transaction. Like I need a job, I want to switch jobs, or I lost my job, or I'm going to start my career and I want to get a job. And it's a moment in time where you pay attention to the search and have the interest to get a job. But there's a much more, I would say, structural way to think about the job search, which is shaping your career, which is not just this particular job, but building a network, building an identity online, creating the conditions where when you apply for a job or when you want to explore job opportunities, you will have all this capital that you've accumulated over time by publishing things, by connecting to other people, by sharing content, by asking intelligent questions, by liking content that other person posts and relating to them, by talking to employees of a particular company that you might be interested in with time, and just how is your experience, would you be willing? So I wouldn't say that's not part of the job search, but it's a different kind of job search where you are thinking in the long term rather than, okay, I need a job for the next month or 2 months. I want to get a job right away, and now I'm in the active search. So connecting to recruiters, and there's a lot of things that you can do on the platform as an investment that then will pay off, and you will be much, much better positioned to distinguish yourself as a candidate. Any recruiter that does a search on your background history and sees that you've been active in LinkedIn, you've been posting, publishing, connecting to others, putting intelligent ideas, and then compare with another candidate that from the outside looks more or less like you. They may have their personal history or their CV is not a lot better, not a lot worse. A recruiter will say, well, it's a toss-up. Any of these candidates could be equally good. Well, you're going to have a very clear advantage. So I'd say that's the most important difference that I think people miss. And this is one of the principles of LinkedIn. Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn, is extremely clear about the importance of building your identity capital and your network as investments in yourself. There's a third area, which is also building your intellectual capital by learning. LinkedIn not long ago bought Lynda, which is a company that does online courses. Now it's shifting, we're calling it LinkedIn Learning. So there are lots of courses on LinkedIn that people can take. Some of them are behind the paywall. You have to sign up for LinkedIn Learning. It's not very expensive. And then you get access to all sorts of courses like Netflix, but with classes that are actually quite useful for business. But you can also teach a class and put it on LinkedIn Learning, or you can create your own class about something like, I'd be interested, you have experience doing podcasts. I would be very interested if you say, okay, here's a little course on podcasting, and you just do 3 or 4 videos and you put them in your profile. Essentially, you post them on the platform, you put them in your profile as part of your work, and that then you post in different places and say, hey, if you'd like to learn how to do a podcast, come and do this, or some of the expertise you have in business, and it all adds up to your portfolio. It doesn't have to be specific for a business area. Today, companies can't. It's not a good idea to hire for skills, because whatever skills you're hired for, you're not going to need 2 years.
Yeah, it changes. Yeah,
the job changes, or you will be promoted. So essentially, companies are beginning to hire for character more than hire for skills. Of course, you need a basic set of skills, but then it's who you are as a person that can be an investment that the company will hold for 10 years. You're a good employee could be 20 or 30 years. It could be 2 or 3, but that would be a failure. A good, an average could be 5 to 10 years of a good employment. And by that time, you're going to be a manager or a manager's manager. And whatever skills you bring to the company are going to not be the skills you need for your new position, even without counting the technological change that requires permanent updating. So creating an identity online that people will relate to and will make them curious. And so this is a well-rounded individual and interesting. Well, at least you get an interview. when maybe other people who are just a name and a CV, and they don't even have a picture, and LinkedIn, and whatever. There's not much information. Be like, well, this guy went to a good school. That's all we know. But we have a previous employer that says he's pretty good at the job, but that doesn't compare to the texture that you develop by having a regular presence and connecting to recruiters. You're not in an active search, but you're what we would have called a passive job candidate, meaning you're open. If somebody reaches out to you, you will consider it, both as an employee potentially or as a consultant. And I'd say the vast majority of the job market today is passive job candidates, people who are not actively seeking but are available. So you're saying, well, I'm not unhappy, but I would consider an opportunity to be better. This is not the summum. This is not the ultimate bliss in my work life. So I'm available. I'm open to engage in new conversations.
That's great feedback. Now that you mention, I think I was aware that they bought Lynda. Is it now integrated? And this is what I don't know. Would I go for courses still to Lynda?
You can do either.
So I can search for courses on LinkedIn.
Or you can search for courses. LinkedIn Learning is the name through LinkedIn, and Lynda is still a brand name that's available. So it's in transition. I don't know exactly what LinkedIn plans to do. They don't have any information, but what I would guess is that over time they will integrate it more and more fully. But it's a long process, and the brand Lynda is actually a very good brand. So I'm sure they're not eager to discard it. So people are entering the courses. My belief is through the two paths. There's a micro website that I created with all the courses that I developed for LinkedIn. So I didn't want them to be behind the paywall. So I made a deal with the people at LinkedIn that I would create all this content while I was a vice president there, but then we would share it freely with all our members. And beyond even, I don't think you even have to be a member to access. And if you go to conscious.linkedin.com, there's about 100 articles and 5-minute videos. It was LinkedIn's internal development, leadership development program, and it's still being used. But I'd say thanks to the generosity of Jeff Weiner, the CEO, and the people from LinkedIn, we agreed that it would be part of our mission to put it available to all our members.
I think you talk about that in the book. It was the part where you were talking to the CEO and he was trying to get you on board. And you said, if I leave my consulting work and I join you, then I work for you. And he said, well, instead of working for me, how about our mission? And then crafted a mission. And you said, okay, you agreed because you then could work for a mission, not just for a person or a company.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, that was meaningful. And part of working for the mission is making decisions that are compatible with the mission rather than following orders. And there's a certain logic to whatever people decide to do rather than arbitrariness, which is very disengaging. A lot of people today in the business world are disappointed or disengaged because they feel disempowered. They feel that, oh, well, whatever the boss says we have to do, and we don't really know what the boss is thinking, but he or she will tell us and we'll just do what we're told. And that is horrible. It's really ugly to live like that.
So there's so much that I'd like to unpack because you write about that in the book. And I want to get to it because when I was reading the book, I felt a combination of I was inspired, and at the same time, I was incredibly skeptical because in my tenure in the corporate world and work didn't resemble what you're calling for or recommending managers and CEOs and companies to do. I saw pieces of it, and I would see glimpses of it, and a part of me was skeptical, not because it wasn't right what you were saying, but it was like, how pragmatically, how can this work when At the end of the day, if a company's not profitable, if it doesn't have X amount of output, it's not in business. But I think that's your argument, is that you can infuse work with meaning and still succeed at work in business because that output may be greater. But I don't want to make your argument for you.
Well, I would say the same thing you said without the word still. Because when you say you can still make, it looks like this is a hindrance. And it's exactly the opposite. I'm saying if you run with two legs, you're going to run a lot faster if you're hopping in only one leg. That's what I'm saying. And it's so obvious that it's only because people are terrible at running and they're hopping in one leg with the other one tied that it seems almost too good to be true. But let me give you a statistic that is mind-blowing. Of the people that have heart disease and go to a cardiologist, the cardiologist says, you have to change your habits or you're going to die. How many do you think change their habits? And actually, the ones that don't change their habits do die. So this is not an empty warning or a threat. It's really like a serious diagnosis.
I'm going to guess the majority of them don't change. That's my guess.
Yeah, but just say a number. Like how many change and how many don't?
65% don't change.
Okay, it's 90.
Wow.
And the number, at least this is not a big statistic. It's from a person that I know that does these kind of heart surgeries. From people that get a heart transplant, it's a little higher. Only 70% don't change. So it goes down from 90 to, but 70% of the people who get a heart transplant, 1 year after, they are back to smoking and drinking and being a couch potato and all those things. That eating, lots of sugar and foods that create metabolic dysfunction. Now that's 70% after a heart transplant. And you say, oh my God. So you're reasonable in having some skepticism and saying, the diet works. That's what I tell people. You don't work. But I mean, it's not that the tools are, this is clearly a better way to manage. It's clearly more profitable. It's clearly more productive, but people don't want to do it. Just like going to the gym is clearly healthier than being a couch potato. And how many people make New Year's resolutions? I'm going to exercise, and then they don't. It's just not pleasant. So this requires discipline, and that's why I think you're appropriately skeptical, and so am I. But this is not a problem of the theory. It's a problem of the commitment of the leaders of different companies to actually be profitable. It's not to do something against profits and then still manage to run a business. This is absolutely positive for every business metric you can imagine. The only metric that doesn't work in the same way is pleasure. So if you're seeking pleasure and comfort and staying in your comfort zone, this is bad. But then again, your comfort zone will kill you. Your comfort zone will keep you nice and cozy until you die. So you have to stress yourself and stretch if you want to stay vibrant. That's a principle of life, and certainly corporate life.
I want to get into this more because it's very interesting to me, and not only outside looking in, but as a former leader and manager and so on and so forth. It's hard personally to inject meaning into work. I found, and I've heard people say that you shouldn't even attempt that, which makes sense to me because work has a specific purpose at a very baseline, and from an evolutionary psychology standpoint, hey, survival and then up the hierarchy of self-actualization, and so I've always thought, well, I'm going to drive my meaning outside of work. And have found it difficult to marry the two. It's not impossible unless I've have, to your point in the book, a lot of autonomy, a lot of control, where I can mold how I do the work and what have you. But I would think, even at Google, it was incredibly difficult because there are so many competing priorities that are passed to you. And to be honest, and this may be helpful feedback for you, but Google makes an attempt to bring people into the process of making their OKRs, creating their goals. I was asked, and then I asked my people, "What you tell me what you think your OKR should be, or what have you?" But not only was I given OKRs that I didn't create, I had to do the same to the employees under me because of specific departmental goals. When that happens, that process, the things you talk about, that breaks.
Let me argue against it. I like to propose a different interpretation. Let's see. I mean, I'm not closing the issue. I'm simply saying let's have a conversation about that. So let's say that you are in a military situation, like in a war. The goal is to win the war. The movie Dances with Wolves, when the main character says, "Although I've been a soldier for many years, fighting in the war between the states, for the first time I felt like I was a warrior, that I was fighting for something meaningful, because he was fighting for the women and the children that had been left in the village of that he was living of the natives." And then that, let's say, the goal there is to win and to survive, and the OKRs are simply a coordination mechanism, but it's impossible to have any sort of organization where people are choosing what they do. So the autonomy all by itself is not a source of meaning. It's a component of meaning, but the autonomy I put fairly low in the hierarchy. For me, the most important is to have a purpose that you are really behind, that makes you proud, that you feel it's a noble thing to pursue. So fighting for something that you believe in. And you're working. I mean, you're doing this podcast. This is work. Maybe not be commercially the same as a job in a company like Google, but this is work. And you are pursuing a purpose of helping other people, or connecting with people, or bringing information to other people that it's sufficiently inspirational to you that you will spend the energy, the time, the mental cycles to go for it. Now, if tomorrow, let's say you engaged your wife in doing something with you, and she's going to help you, you would have to give her some direction, because you know the podcast, and she's coming to collaborate with you. So it's not going to be a case where you say, okay, do whatever you want, you choose your OKRs, it's fine, just help me, because she wouldn't even know what would be helpful. But the most important conversation would be, is she as committed as you are to the mission that you've defined for your podcast? And if the answer is yes, there's a lot of room to negotiate what's necessary. The way I like to say it is, nobody loves changing diapers. And it's not, people don't say, yeah, I have the baby because I'm so excited about changing diapers for the next couple of years. But nobody says, no, I don't want to have a baby because I don't want to change diapers. Well, changing diapers is part of loving your child. And it's a way to express care and love, and it's part of the deal. And you just do it. But that doesn't detract from the experience of raising a child, which is one of the beautiful things people can do. Now, people ask me also, do you like traveling so much? I spent 20 years of my life as a consultant, and I traveled all over the world. And they say, oh, you like to travel? I say, well, if I could do what I do without traveling, it would be better. But given that to do what I love to do, traveling is part of the deal, just like changing diapers is part of raising a child, I'll do it happily. I mean, I wouldn't travel if I didn't have to do it to work. But now, as part of the deal, it's acceptable, and it doesn't bother me. So I'm happy with it. And many of the OKRs, I'd say, are things like that. That if you have an alignment about the mission and the values that you're going to express while you pursue the mission, then the autonomy to define your own, define your own work process is more a micro thing, like how you do day to day. But you don't, at least my experience is, people don't feel disempowered once they understand, they have to be part of a larger organization.
So just to back up a second, you were at UC Berkeley. You studied economic theory, is that right? At UC Berkeley, you also went to MIT, is that right?
Yes. I taught management, accounting, and control systems at MIT.
What performance-based system or performance evaluation systems have you seen that you admired or you thought got it right?
None. There are none. I mean, that's why I wrote the book, because there is no system, but it's not because people are dopes. It's just that there's a logical contradiction. And it took me 25 years to understand why the perfect performance system, it's a mythical entity, just like the perfect car. Give me a family sedan that's safe, comfortable, economical, and also goes really fast, has great acceleration, a powerful engine, and it's stylish. It's like, no, I'm sorry, you can't do that. You have to choose. Do you want a sports coupe or you want a family sedan? But you can't get both in the same car. And if you try to put both in the same car, you're going to get something horrible that it's neither. So with the performance metrics, it's pretty much the same dilemma, because if you look at the organization as a system, the goal of the organization, I use the analogy of a soccer team. The goal of the soccer team is to win. But then if you look at the defensive player and you ask the defensive player, what do you get paid to do? Well, he said, my job is to defend. And from the individual perspective, it looks like the job is to defend, but really from the system, from the team perspective, the job of this individual is to help the team win, whatever it takes. I mean, imagine the coach saying, go forward because we're losing 1-0 and there's 5 minutes to go. And the defensive player saying, sorry, coach, that's not my job. I'm staying back because I'm getting paid to defend, not to help the offense. And well, if I'm the coach, I fire that person. So you don't understand your job. Or if you were playing chess, saying, okay, my goal is to take the pieces of the other person. And that's a bad way to play chess. You're going to lose because you win at chess by checkmate, not by taking pieces. But piecemeal, it looks like, and it actually is a reasonable heuristic to say, if you can take a piece of a higher value, then it's a good trade and try to take the pieces of your opponent. And in business, it's the same. Most people think they're getting paid to do what they call their jobs, but that is not really their job. What the company wants is to be profitable, to achieve the mission, and so on. But that requires that people make sacrifices for the sake of that and trade down or let their OKRs not be optimized. And no incentive system will solve this problem. If you give people local performance metrics, then you're going to create silos. Every person will focus on their own area of accountability, and you will have these conflicts that are intractable. And if you tell people we're going to measure you by local metrics, then everybody loses their focus because they say, well, I'm helping everybody, but then nobody's accountable for anything. And to go back to the example of the car, from a global perspective, you want two qualities. You want accountability and you want cooperation. You want people to be accountable and put in their best effort, and you want people to cooperate with others to achieve the collective goal. The problem is that if you incentivize cooperation, you're going to hurt accountability, because to cooperate, you have to measure people as a team. And when you measure people as a team, their individual OKRs are hidden. You just don't see what they accomplish as individuals. And if you try to incentivize accountability by measuring them as individuals, then they will not cooperate, because they'll say, hey, wait a minute, I'm getting paid to increase sales revenue. So I'm not going to let some other salesperson come and sell into my area, even though he or she may have contacts in my area. This is my territory, and nobody gets to hunt in my territory because these are all my clients. And the truth is, they're not the salesperson's clients, they're the clients of the company. But the incentive system makes it look like they're personal clients of the salesperson. I don't know if I can be clear, but that's why I wrote the book. It's a horrible problem.
So how do you And I think part of this you cover in the book, but I'm obviously I'm still going to ask you how do you fix that or mitigate those issues, because it's a double bind in a way. You basically say you don't get paid to do your job, you get paid to play a role or your role. So, well, let me ask you it from the bottom up. If I'm an employee and I have managers, is that out of my hands?
Yes. No, it's a very good question. It's a very good question. So if I'm an employee at any level, you could be an individual performer or you could be a senior vice president. I mean, we're all employees. So let's just say I see an opportunity for the company to win, so to speak, or to achieve its mission profitably. But it's an opportunity that is going to potentially harm my OKRs, my individual performance metrics. So I go to my manager or my team and I say, hey, I have this dilemma. I'd like to explain this to you. And I'm not sure if I'm right that this trade-off is worth it, that is worth the price in terms of decrease of individual performance compensated by an increase in collective achievement. So I need your help. Let's think about this together and what would be the best way to proceed. And then I would explain the options that I see and the consequences, and then see what let's just say the rest of the team or my manager says. And if my manager says, oh, that's a great thing, Fred, please, let's just say, go. Let's say I'm the defensive player, and I would tell the team, guys, we're losing. It would be good for me to go forward and try to help tie the game. But I have to tell you, this increases the chances that in a counterattack, we can get scored against again. And instead of losing 1-0, we might lose 2-0. Now, if the team says, don't worry, I mean, it's fine. The losing 1-0 or losing 2-0, it doesn't make any difference to us. Let's go tie the game. Now, at that time, everything is fine. If after the game, the coach or the manager comes and says, you're fired because, we said that 1 goal allowed is the maximum. And if you allow 2 goals, you're not part of this team anymore. That will destroy the culture. So the negotiation is the first part, but then the leadership has to be consistent with the understanding of the trade-off. So you see, it's not the problem of the OKRs; it's the intelligence with which you use them. It's not the OKRs' fault. This is just math. You just measure and you get a number. But running your company by OKRs, it's very dangerous because I call them like a Russian roulette. You have 5 out of 6 times they'll give you a pretty decent approximation to what's going on, but the 6th time you blow your head up because the round is in the chamber and the OKR is going to tell you exactly the wrong thing. So when the OKR looks good, your company is losing.
So I've seen where people are doing a bell curve where the numbers in aggregate are too high, even if that's the reality. I've heard say they can't be that high. We've got to lower that number. And I've seen people been let go who are performing. They may not have superior numbers or the highest score, but since they're on the bottom end of that curve, they're forced. And I've seen managers who were forced to let those people go. And that, to me, that those things can break organizations, departments, and people's spirit. Not only the manager feels horrible because he doesn't want to let the person go. He thinks there's value in that person, and they are. But then that person who gets let go is demoralized because of that. So it's precarious. You're right. It's absolutely precarious. Right.
No, exactly. But I mean, there are 2 ways to think about that. One is, and both are right. One is to just feel the sorrow for how horrible much of the business world is today. And if you look at the Gallup numbers of engagement, in the US, which is one of the highest countries in the world, only 30% of people are engaged. According to a very simple questionnaire, like, would you want a friend to work in your company? Would you recommend your company to a friend? Do you feel somebody cares about you in your company? And when you ask 12 very simple, basic questions, you'd say, of course. I mean, it would be terrible to work in any place where you didn't get a strong yes to all these questions. Well, only 30% of the people of the workforce in the US is there, but worldwide is 13. So practically 90% of the people hate their jobs or don't care. I would say in the US, 30% are engaged, 40% don't care one way or the other, and 30% actively hate their jobs. I mean, these are people who say, no, I don't like it. And many of them, possibly because of experiences like the one you just described, it is lack of respect to force anybody to do anything. It's like a thief saying, give me your money. I'm putting a gun to your head. Of course, I'll give the thief my money. But imagine now the thief says, give me your creativity, or if not, I'll shoot you, or give me your respect, or be my friend. And if you're my friend, I'll give you your money back. And if you're not my friend, I'll shoot you. Okay, I mean, I'll say I'm your friend, but you can't get my friendship at the point of a gun, and you can't get people's commitments and their best, threatening them with what seems to them arbitrary decisions. Now, there's another side of this story, which I hear from many of the managers, which is the performance inflation. That people are friends, and it's hard to give tough feedback. So if you allow people to give any grades they want, I saw this at MIT and in Berkeley. If you allow people to give any grade they want, then suddenly everybody starts getting B pluses, and then A minuses, and then A's, and then A pluses. And there's a dynamic where if you're a hard grader, then the students get upset with you because everybody else is an easy grader, so you have to go. It's a little bit like inflation in the economy. So there is a case in the performance metrics literature for forced rankings, which is not completely crazy. It's not just that people are evil, and it's true sometimes there are cases of unfairness, but given the incomplete information, sometimes it's the best an organization can do. But that's only because there's no trust, there's no commitment, there's no meaning, there's no sense of community. So just imagine how different, and this is the other way to look at the problem, how profitable a company could be if they start distinguishing themselves from others, because these things don't happen. Like the company will treat the managers are indoctrinated more than educated on the absolute respect they need to have for everybody. There are no arbitrary decisions. Every decision has a reason behind. People may not agree with the final decision, but they can certainly understand why it would make sense from a certain point of view. And everybody can discuss things and can ask questions and has the right to be explained to, because that's what it means to be treated as a human being. And my book is not about saying, well, treat people kindly, and then, you're still going to make some profits. No, I'm saying if you treat people as human beings, you're going to make a lot more profits because you're treating your resources like their nature. You wouldn't exploit people like cows. Why do you think people are going to give you their best if you treat them like
right? And especially, in times of low unemployment where the labor market's tight. You mentioned a statistic about working somewhere 10 years or more. That seems rare nowadays, right? The people are of course the industry's changed rapidly nowadays. Things get disrupted and some companies don't last that long. But I'm seeing a lot of in my recent past. It's been longer term, but prior to that, it was. I'd be somewhere, 3-5 years, and then either that company was sold or I was part of that, and then we move on. So, in a tight labor market, that's even more important. So I'm reading your book and agreeing with everything you're saying, but it seems so far out there. But as I read your book, the skeptical part of me would come up over again, and either in the experience of what I have gone through or what I've seen in other departments, but then there would be pieces where I would read and I just want to give you this feedback. I would read and go, that's what I want to either do or be or experience, or there was something bigger than me that I felt. So like right now, I'm weighing a lot of options in my life from a work perspective, and this book is timely in a sense, but it touches on things of where I am right now, Fred. Like, some of the things you talked about earlier, the problems, the difficulties, that's what hesitates. So when somebody calls me and says, "Hey, can you came?" I was just flown somewhere, and I went to the company just last week, and I hesitate to go back into the corporate life because of some of those things, right? But then I miss the camaraderie and the other friendships and some of the meaning that can derive out of that camaraderie.
Can I offer you something? I mean, I'd like to propose an experiment. What if you went, let's say this company wants you, I mean, bad enough that they're willing to stretch a little bit. And you just go, for example, I put together a brief presentation on SlideShare there on LinkedIn. I'll send you the link afterwards. But it takes literally 5 minutes to read that presentation. It doesn't require anything more, and it's cartoonish. It's a fun little thing. Just send this presentation to the people in this company and say, hey, I'd like to have a conversation about the culture that you would like to create in the company. And how would I feel living in that culture and fully contributing to you? Not like, I don't trust you guys, but more in order to contribute fully, I realized I want an environment where certain values are upheld, like respect, rationality, non-arbitrariness, argumentation, in a spirit of collaboration, excellence and accountability, and so on. And then you send them that and say, can we talk about this? If they say, no, we don't have time for that, then you know who you're dealing with, and it would be very good to be skeptical. But if they say, absolutely, thank you, and by the way, can you give us the title of the book? I mean, this seems great, and we all bought the book and we read it, and we'd love to have a roundtable with you and whatever, and say, hey, I did a podcast with the author. Why don't you listen to that and see what happens? Now, if they did all that, you would be like, wow, these people are pretty serious about creating a constructive culture, and maybe I can find my camaraderie. So, I mean, just quoting Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. I'm not saying don't be naive. I'm not saying, oh yeah, just go anywhere in the corporate world and people are wonderful. I'm saying no, there are a lot of sick people out there. There are evil people and there are unconscious people. So you want to find out who's evil, stay away from them. Who's unconscious, invite them to become conscious. And there are a few that are really conscious, and they're the only ones that deserve your energy. So find a way to test it. I have to confess, I have phenomenal experiences, and not everything has been great, but I've been working in the same business world, for 30 years as a consultant, as an employee, as an executive. And, I met a few sick people throughout my life, for people that were very painful for me to interact with. But even as a consultant, I'd say the vast majority of experiences I've had were supremely rewarding. I am so grateful to many of the people, but I test them. Like I offer this and say, and the people that don't connect with this, they don't hire me. They don't want me and I don't want them. So we part ways very amicably.
That is great, because I was going to ask you, hey, give me some litmus tests, give me things that I can ask companies but before I get involved with them, because my feeble questions are around culture, which is so ephemeral. It's hard for anybody to define. So I'll say, so what's your culture like? And they'll give me probably some canned answer, and I'm not even sure how to interpret the answer. But if I had something a little more solid, like the framework you're talking about, hey, what do you think of this? And can we have the discussion around this? To that point, I was going to ask one of these companies, I interviewed Bob Stanton. He wrote a book on the no asshole rule.
Yes.
So I interviewed him. I was going to say, hey, take a look at this podcast. Tell me what you think and what in relation to your culture, because I'm having to discern. I had a conversation last year on the phone with a company that reached out to me. I was very excited because they were very much in line of what I wanted to do or what I enjoyed doing. And one of the leaders I followed on YouTube, but they were talking about one of the co-founders that I would be working under or with. And I was talking to their internal HR, and I said, tell me about that person. What are they like? And I picked up all the code words, Fred, for difficult, bossy, all it was all code word, but it was plain to me that
somebody
they were
that breaks the no asshole rule. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, it was, and I started laughing, and this is where everything fell apart. I just started laughing because I didn't. It was involuntary. I was laughing, and I said, "Look, just tell me that they're a ball buster. It's okay." I said, "I've worked with difficult people. Just tell me. I want to know beforehand." So, Fred, part of your book, and the reason I wanted you on the podcast is because in my life, I'm looking for not only monetary, the ability to, but I'm looking for an ROI that of happiness, right? I'm looking for, if I do the math, if I do the calculation of the work plus my life and everything, what kind of happiness will I get out of it? And I don't want work to subtract so much that the overall happiness of my life is low, even, balancing everything out, even putting the good things in life in. And sometimes that's what happens because work is so all encompassing. I give my all, when I do, like you do, like most people do. So that's not just an 8-hour day. I take it home and, the weekends and what have you. And so I'm reluctant to just give it away without thought.
I wrote the book for you and for people that have that perspective. I'm so pleased with what you say, because that's the attitude that I see in a lot of the great people I meet in the business world. And they are looking for, as you said, a litmus test or a way to make these decisions more intelligently. And then when I look at the other side, I work with a whole bunch of CEOs or senior executives that are trying to attract these people, because you are the type of valuable contributor that most companies are looking for. Not the person, well, I just want to get paid, I don't care, I don't want any meaning, I just want money. I mean, I call that mercenary. And that mercenary mentality does not match up to people who are missionaries, that are saying, I want to pursue the mission. I want to be excited. I want happiness. I want meaning. Of course, I want money. I need to have my basic needs covered. But how much money is going to take for you to start getting bored about money? And for most people, it's a lot less than they envision. You don't need a Learjet of your own to say, oh, I don't need any more. I know people that have Learjets and they're not satisfied. And I know people that don't even dream of having a Lear. They don't even need a car. They're just like, I'll take a taxi. That's fine. And they're super happy, and they're not willing to trade off the meaningfulness of their activity for, a plate of lentils.
My last year, Google, it wasn't a happy year, and I own that. But people don't understand that. When I talk about Google or any company, I say, look, there's many worlds, and consider each world is a team, and your experience of that company is going to be what world you land on and what those people like are on that world, because it's so big, it's just so vast, and there are quite a few reorganizations, and at the very end, it was just, even with all the perks and everything, I just I decided to leave. So to your point, people say, why would you leave? It's not, there's more to life. But I wish companies could advertise their meaning or their values in that way.
They can. This is one of the things that LinkedIn is good for. You have all the people looking for jobs, but you also have all the companies trying to attract the people that will contribute the most. And I'm hoping that the companies find ways to differentiate themselves. Just like they say, oh, look, come here and you have all these benefits. Dog walking, it's a nice thing to have, but it doesn't compare to meaning. It doesn't compare to respect or a sense of community. So companies can advertise that. And it's very simple. Things like, our reading list is The No Asshole Rule, The Meaning Revolution, books that are totally irritating to anybody who doesn't align with them. So I think it's possible for companies to differentiate themselves, but they have to do it. It's like the diet; it doesn't work unless you do it.
Fred, thank you so much. Are you a Buddhist, by the way?
I sympathize with Buddhist philosopher. I wouldn't. I'm a meditator, and the part of Buddhism that has to do with I would say the psychology of meditation, it's very appealing to me. I'm not religious in the sense of supernatural beings and things like that.
Sure. And that's where I am too. I found myself in that camp from a evolutionary psychology point of view because I'm meditating.
Have you read Why Buddhism is True?
Yes. In fact, I took the course. He has a course.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. Bob Wright wrote one of the quotes for my book. So I'm very proud of that. He's a great author. I'm very proud that he liked the book and he wrote the blurb.
Fred, I would love to talk to you another hour. I know you've got to go. Thank you so much for coming on. The book is The Meaning Revolution, The Power of Transcendent Leadership. I'd encourage everybody to read it. It's great. And like I said, I'm almost through with it. I'm going to keep reading it. Inspired, it opens up my mind, and more importantly, maybe the possibilities of what work can be and maybe should be. So, Fred, thank you so much. Take care now.
Thank you, Larry. Bye-bye.
Well, that is all the time we have today. Please spread the word if you enjoyed the episode. Leave us a review on iTunes and share it with your friends on your favorite social platforms. Big thank you to Sam Williams, my audio guy. Make sure you visit LarryWeeks.com for all my content, and we will talk again soon.